406 on 105.9 WMAL. My name is Dan Mandis in for Vince Coglianese. You can always follow me on Twitter at Dan Mandis Show. Let me repost this real quick before I play you some absolutely horrifying audio. If you want to see the video with the audio that I'm about to play, just find me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show, X in particular. So you know how the Democrats are now saying that Republicans are weird, and J.D. Vance is weird, Donald Trump is weird, and, you know, we're all weird if we're conservative? The libs of TikTok has revealed that a person named Jeffrey Marsh, non-binary apparently, has now received a special invite from the DNC to be a featured guest. Jeffrey Marsh is known for telling kids on TikTok to cut off contact and disrespect their parents. He also has a Patreon where kids pay to speak to him privately. And this is, as the libs of TikTok point out, this is who is representing the Democrat Party. Now, here's, you do a quick Google of Jeffrey Marsh, and I'm going to tell you it's pretty scary. Here's what they say. Non-binary TikToker Jeffrey Marsh is facing controversy for sharing grooming videos on social media platforms. These videos have been accused of manipulating and exploiting young children, and Marsh has been asking children to go no contact with their parents. Another video by Marsh threatened trans critics that they will respect transgender people. So Jeffrey Marsh, this is one part of a video where he does speak about disrespecting elders. And again, remember, he's talking to kids.
Hi, love. Here are 3 ways to disrespect your elders.
And I will tell you, by the way, if you want to go look at this video, he's wearing all kinds of makeup, and he's wearing a big old yellow flowery dress.
Hi, love. Here are 3 ways to disrespect your elders. So if you're dealing with a narcissistic parent or a bullying boss at work, you need to 1, play innocent. There's some sort of secret code or language they're using to try to get you to do what they want. And all you need to do is ask, what do you mean? I don't get it. Could you explain that? Be innocent. Number 2, feel no guilt. Bullies and narcissists use guilt as leverage. And if you refuse to feel guilty, it doesn't matter what you do or what they do or say. And number 3, limit contact. Don't do extra. Don't go above and beyond. Don't show up constantly, consistently, and all the time sacrificing your life for their agenda.
So there you go. That is Jeffrey Marsh. And very controversial. And again, you know, not to belabor the point, but I will because it's an important point to belabor. According to the libs of TikTok, Jeffrey Marsh received a special invite from the DNC to be a featured guest. And again, there are grooming video controversies, and I just played you the audio as well. Yet it is the Democrats that will call Republicans and conservatives weird, which I find a little weird myself. So again, if you want to check out that video, you can. It's on my X feed at Dan Mandis Show. You know, it does feel like America is being red-pilled, one person at a time. There's a great video making the rounds on social media, and it's, to me, a great example of what happens when people step away from the insanity and the lies of the mainstream media and the machine that is the Democrat Party. Take a step back and take a look at what's really happening for yourself. Do your own research. You know, doing your own research back during the COVID days, that meant you wanted to kill people, according to the media and the left. But right now, it could actually save America's future, doing your own research. So there's a video making the rounds, a black woman who posted about how she was shocked that Donald Trump's live stream with Elon Musk was actually about policy and not Donald Trump threatening and threatening to kill people, which is what some folks in the media and on social media were reporting, that Donald Trump, he was crazed and he was threatening and all of these things. Well, this woman decided that she was going to watch the video for herself.
I saw all of these negative headlines from our media about how bad the interview was. Now, if you didn't listen to the interview, you would think that Donald Trump said he was going to do something to everybody in the world. Let me tell you what it was. I sat there, and I normally don't listen to speeches or interviews, but I sat there and I listened to the entire thing, and it was really quite amazing.
Absolutely love it. Now, if you want to see this woman's video, you can. Again, it's on my X feed at Dan Mandis Show. Donald Trump, as you know, because we covered this extensively yesterday, Dan Mandis in for Vince Coglianese, they spoke about policy. And it just sounded like a couple of guys speaking in a bar. And so CNN in particular, they had this graphic, and it said that Elon Musk was throwing, and I'm going to air quote this, softball questions at Donald Trump. Well, you know what I would say to that is, first of all, again, it was a couple of guys just having a conversation. But if you'd like to talk about softball questions, why don't you media members and fine members of the media, I would like you to describe the kind of questions that you've been able to ask Kamala Harris since she announced that she's going to step in and run for president. I'll wait. Again, I'll repeat the question because I'm not hearing any response. Media, what kind of questions have you asked Kamala Harris since she began running for president? How would you describe those questions? No, you haven't been able to ask her any questions because she's refused to do any interviews. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. Donald Trump, not only has he did the 2-hour interview with Elon Musk, but he also spoke to the black journalists in, I think it was Chicago, and he's done all kinds of interviews. He'll appear anywhere, and Kamala Harris won't. That's the whole point. Trump spoke about the economy, illegal immigration, foreign policy, and crime, all of the things that Americans are worried about. And so to the media, he was, I'm quoting all this, rambling, threatening, hostile, glitch-filled, and that Trump was slurring and lisping, when the reality is that he talked about what he wants to do. And that does scare the left and the media because that's something that Kamala Harris simply cannot or won't do. Now, if you missed the show yesterday when I filled in for Vince, one of the things that I talked about, and a lot of other folks did too, is that Donald Trump was not lisping. That was part of the technology on the Spaces aspect of X. And now there's been a new version that has been put out that is has Donald Trump not slurring and not lisping. And by the way, I will tell you that I did find it kind of ironic that you had all of these members of the media and all of these media outlets focused on Donald Trump's alleged slurring and his lisping, yet they've been ignoring how long? The issues with Joe Biden and his voice and his brain. So come on. Again, it is the hypocrisy of the left. But back to this woman. Back to the red pilling of America and this woman who decided, you know what? I'm not going to listen to the media. I'm going to listen to this 2-hour conversation on X between Elon Musk and Donald Trump for myself. And I love the fact that she was surprised that it was a great conversation.
You say the same things. You address the same issues. You address inflation. You address the war. You address freedom of speech that you guys are trying so hard to remove from everyone. When you address those same issues, or if you address those same issues, then your party platform would be about issues and not about Donald Trump.
That's exactly right. And the point that she's making is that Kamala Harris won't talk about the issues. The media, by and large, has not pressed them to cover the issues. I mean, their issue has pretty much been, Trump, 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 orange man bad. That's why she won't talk about the issues, because she knows that the American people, when they look at the issues, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they've been absolutely upside down. And so now she is theoretically seeing some momentum, and they're afraid that her talking about the issues will crash and kill that momentum. Why? Because she can't talk about the issues, because she either doesn't know the issues or she doesn't know how to speak to the issues. And that is true. Now, when you look at what Kamala Harris has done, for example, with the border, Donald Trump says about 20 million has come in just in the time that Biden's been in office. Nobody really knows, to be honest, as you know, but what we do know is it is really bad. But we've seen the stories about illegals literally taking over communities, taking over sections of cities. They become dilapidated, crime-filled, and they're destroying entire neighborhoods. What we do know about the horrendous episodes of rape and murder that have happened at the hands of these illegal aliens. Now, this woman has some painful truths about her community, the black community.
Talk about this illegal immigration. It's what I call the black replacement plan. We're now only a little between 13 and 14% of the population. They say they brought in 20 million illegal immigrants. That's one of the numbers that I've heard. And, it's not confirmed, one of the numbers that I've heard, because, of course, they're not going to tell us how many for real. And they have no idea themselves. But when that happens, we're only over 40 million. So just think, they brought in adults, and mostly adult men that are half of our population. Do you think that will not affect what they're going to do in our communities? Do you think that won't affect what's going to happen with schools in predominantly black communities, Hispanic communities? Do you think that will not affect us?
Yeah, I mean, there was the front page, I think it was of the New York Post this morning, where they spoke about 1 in 5 hotels in New York City is now being used as a migrant shelter. And they've spent $5 billion dealing with the migrant situation in New York. And that migrant situation in New York, all of these illegal aliens that are taking up space and taking up money and resources, people are getting really angry. I remember in Chicago, south side of Chicago, you had the community rise up and they were pointing at and yelling at the aldermen and the city council and whatever it is that they have, the people in charge there in Chicago on the south side, and they were angry because their resources were being taken up by the illegal aliens. And this person knows this black female who decided to, for herself, watch and listen to the Donald Trump Spaces interview with Elon Musk. And yeah, she says there's a lot of problems. She is right, of course, with all of this. And she is also right when Kamala Harris, and you know that if she gets in, she wants to give all of these folks the ability to vote. And so that's why when people say that if we lose this, then it's going to be our last free and fair election because Kamala Harris will give them amnesty. Eventually, they'll get those voting rights. Yes, they'll get representation in Congress through the census. And when that happens, the vote is diluted to the point where the black vote won't matter. And eventually, the conservatives and Republicans won't have a chance. That's why Donald Trump is out there saying this. That's why many Republicans and conservatives are out there saying that if we lose this election and Kamala Harris does what she says that she wants to do, then the odds and the cards, the deck will be stacked against conservatives in every single federal election moving forward. You can see the entire thing on my X feed at Dan Mandis Show because I think that what this lady says absolutely does make a lot of sense. And as I said at the beginning of this segment, it really is the red pilling of America. I love this audio. It was making the rounds. I heard Bongino play it earlier today. I played it, I think, yesterday. It is a Philadelphia mom who can't make ends meet because of Bidenflation and Kamala-nomics. If you missed it, here it is again.
How hard has inflation hit you?
It hit me hard. It's hitting me hard.
What do you blame for it? I blame the federal government at this point. If a working class mom who works as a paralegal cannot buy a $2 bell pepper because it's now $5, imagine a mother living on food stamps. Imagine a mother who's making minimum wage trying to feed children.
Yep.
They're killing us without killing us. If you understand that. They're killing us without telling us they're killing us. They're hurting people in ways that they can't help themselves. It's either feed my child or, well, how about feed my children and I don't eat, but I have to go work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. She does get emotional. And as I said yesterday, I feel bad for this woman, but the question that I would ask, who did you vote for in 2020? Who do you plan on voting for in 2024, in November? Who are you going to vote for? Because as much as I sympathize with this woman, and I really do sympathize, elections and votes have consequences. And so you can't complain about the economy if you voted for Joe Biden. You can't complain about the economy and the price of things if you plan on voting for Kamala Harris in November. Trust me when I say, Philadelphia mom, I do feel your pain. So please vote accordingly. That's all I ask. 428 on WMAL. My name is Dan Mandis in for Vince Coglianese. Vince, by the way, returns on Monday. Now, coming up next, Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power the Future, going to talk about Kamala Harris's damaging positions on the energy industry, and obviously that does impact our economy. Donald Trump, it's 3 words, friends, drill, baby, drill. We'll talk about Kamala coming up next on WMAL. 4:35 right here on WMAL 105.9. Dan Mandis in for Vince Coglianese. Always appreciate the opportunity. Want to welcome on into the program Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power the Future, to talk about Kamala Harris's damaging positions on the energy industry. Daniel, one of the things that I find interesting is there's a headline in Reuters. Kamala Harris, the energy policy of the vice president is strategically ambiguous, her aides say. I don't know if there's anything ambiguous about the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden energy policy of the last 3.5 years, but she's really not talking about what she aims to do for the next 4 if she actually wins.
No, and it's great to see Reuters giving her such praise. I mean, I wish they would throw the rest of us a bone. Strategically ambiguous is a very polite way of saying just dodging the issue. And Kamala, as a candidate, has flip-flopped on major issues. And this is not a reversal like, you know what, guys, I've tried broccoli a few times and now I kind of like it. Like, this is a huge reversal to be on record for 5-6 years saying, I support the Green New Deal, I support a fracking ban, and now come out and say, well, actually, her campaign doesn't support that anymore. It's so laughably convenient, the timing of these flip-flops, that the only way to explain it is to hide from the media. And that's why she hasn't done any interview. She's not talking to the press. She's not talking to the public, because she can't explain the fact that she's reversed on major energy issues just in time to get to the November election.
Yeah, it is. It is a joke and frustrating for those of us in the media. Talk about over the last 3.5 years, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and their war on domestic oil production, because, you know, there's the Keystone Pipeline. We know that gasoline prices went way up. Talk about how Biden and Harris's policies directly impacted the price of gas, the cost of gasoline, and how that impacted, of course, inflation.
Yeah, and we're all feeling it after 3.5 years of this administration having complete policy discretion, using the administrative state, the Department of Energy, Department of Interior, the EPA, executive orders, et cetera. And we just have to look at where the price of food is, the price of utilities, all consumer goods. Basically everything in the nation is 15, 20, some things are 40% more expensive. And when you make energy expensive, you make life expensive, because literally everything before you, everything your eyes can look at right now, it was either made with or grown with or transported by energy, and all of those costs get tacked on. So, we can talk all day long about, what Kamala plans to do as president, and she will say, as president, I will X, Y, and Z. I'm going to take on price gouging, and I'm going to take on corporate greed. But for the best indication of what she will do is seeing what she has done, and what her administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has done is punish the energy industry relentlessly, and that has led to prices going through. It's also led to war around the world, right? It's made our enemies very rich. It's made China very strong. So there's a lot to unpack in just their energy policies, and it's not just laughable. It's angering that she can say, well, when I'm elected, I will do this. We know what you've done because you've been doing it the last 3.5 years, and we are all worse off as a result.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, we could talk about Iran and how the Biden-Harris administration looked the other way, allowing Iran to sell millions and billions of dollars of oil to China, for example. Yep. That impacts the war on terror because Iran then turns around and funds Hamas. They fund Hezbollah as well. So this conversation, it's more than just the price of gas or the price of goods. This impacts the war on terror as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, it does, absolutely. And look, I'm literally holding my calculator as I'm doing this. Under the Trump administration, with all of the sanctions in place, Iran was producing around 300,000 barrels of oil a day at $55 a barrel. Doing the calculator, that's $16,500,000. So every day, Iran has $16,500,000 to fund their economy, to do whatever they need to do, et cetera, et cetera. Since Biden has come into office and lifted all of those sanctions and let them operate freely on the global oil market, they're now producing 3.2 million barrels a day at roughly $80 a barrel. Let's do the calculator, $256 million a day. That's a big delta, right? 256 million versus 16 million. And what do they do with the delta? Well, we know what Iran does with their surplus cash. They build schools for girls, right? And they build LGBTQ fulfillment centers. And no, of course, when Iran has a lot of cash, they bomb Israel. They fund terrorism, right? They fund the Houthis that have been attacking tankers going through the Red Sea. So Iran now has literally hundreds of millions of dollars a day more. And Iran's in the paper nonstop. We see Iran is threatening Israel imminently with a strike. Iran is hacking both Trump and the Harris campaigns. Cyber attacks funded by Iran. Well, where did they get all the damn money from? And that's why, again, if there was ever the chance to have the media ask Kamala Harris about her foreign policy, about her energy policy, it's very clear. Your energy decisions have made Iran rich, and a rich Iran is a dangerous world. Don't tell me what you're going to do as president. Explain to me why you did this as vice president, and why are we better for it? Why should we give you a promotion?
Absolutely. And Daniel, the problem is that, and Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power the Future, the problem that I have with the media is that, not talk radio, but the media, ABC, CBS, and so forth, is that and I know all about this. For whatever reason, the media likes to, turn the other way when it comes to Biden allowing Iran to get the billions of dollars so that they can fund terrorism. We are essentially funding both sides of the Hamas and Israel war, and it's frustrating, but I digress. Let's talk about Pennsylvania and Michigan, the oil production in those states, and how this sort of ambiguous energy policy that she is supposedly out there not talking about. Talk about how that impacts Pennsylvania and Michigan and some of these other states that obviously are very important in the battleground states, important in the election, and how that impacts Donald Trump, because Trump wants to drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, and there are some states that are energy states that are very, very red, and they're not really in play. And that's obvious, right? There's not a huge concern about Oklahoma. There's not a lot of concern about the way the Dakotas will vote. There's been a push for decades by the Democrats to turn Texas blue. But I don't think anyone is particularly worried about Texas. But then there are a number of battleground states that are also huge energy states that are classically purple. And I think Pennsylvania is probably the best example. It's the number 2 producer of natural gas in the nation, right behind Texas. There is enough natural gas in shale, as well as what has yet to even been discovered in Pennsylvania, to power the entire world for decades. I mean, that's how much natural gas Pennsylvania is sitting on. And what does this administration do? Well, it has a natural gas pause. Remember that? That was back in February. Biden announced we're going to pause natural gas exports, LNG exports. Never explained why. Never explained what the goal was. Made Putin very, very rich, because most of the countries in the world that were buying American LNG had no other alternative than to buy it from Putin. And that pause is still ongoing. Well, that's really bad if you're in Pennsylvania. And around 500,000 people work directly in the energy industry in Pennsylvania. About 120,000 people in Pennsylvania work directly in natural gas and in fracking. They've all been impacted by that. And I got to think they all have husbands or wives and children and parents. And if all of them just vote for their job, right, that's how you flip Pennsylvania. And it's not only a question at the presidential level, it's a question for at the Senate level. Bob Casey, if he's awake right now, I'd love to ask him, where have you been on the fracking ban for your state of Pennsylvania? You've been a senator for 18 years. No one knows a damn thing you've done. No one can even pick you out of a crowd, but you want to run for term number 4. Why? Why does Pennsylvania need Bob Casey in the Senate when Pennsylvania doesn't even know Bob Casey's in the Senate? I'm sure most of the listeners right now don't even know who Bob Casey is.
Yeah.
Right. This is the problem with this, these attacks on energy, is that you not only have lousy representation at the federal level, but sometimes even the members of Congress from these states could care less about this industry, despite how important this industry is to their state.
One of the things that always frustrated me is Biden and Harris and Jen Psaki and Corinne Jean-Pierre. You know, they always say, and they always talk about in defense of Biden's energy policy, well, what about the thousands of oil and gas leases that are already out there and approved and not being utilized? And, you know, from what I understand, and you're the expert, but from what I understand, yes, there are some oil and gas leases out there that have been approved. The problem is that there's a lot of regulation involved, and so you may have the lease, but you can't use the land until they jump through a whole bunch of hoops.
Exactly, and I forget what the number was. That was the big talking point back in 2021 or 22. Was it 9,600 or 9,000 leases? What about the 9,000
the term 9,000 comes to mind.
It was the 9,000 leases, and then we wrote about this when it was in the news, and we said, well, what if the normal number of leases is around 100,000? Isn't that 9,000 a little bit more in context of reeling? Well, actually, that's not that many leases, right? And Obama did this a lot during the administration, in his administration. He would give you leases, but they'd be on land that there's no oil and gas underneath. Why? Because he treats us like children, right? So you could get – it's the same as Bernie Sanders, who says, we have a fracking ban in the state of Vermont. It is illegal to frack in Vermont. Well, no one's going to frack in Vermont because there's nothing to frack. So who cares about your ban? So when Barack Obama would say, we're making all these leases available, but you knew the leases were valueless, you know what that says? That says, Mr. President, you're treating us like children. You're treating us like morons. Like when you want your kids to go to bed and you have to lie and come up with an excuse because if you don't, the tooth fairy's not going to come. And so why do you treat us like children with these numbers, with these fake numbers about jobs, fake numbers about oil production, fake numbers about leases? This is the disdain that basically all elected Democrats have for the American people.
Let's talk, and I think that's one of the reasons why in the news today you've got Frank Luntz, I think it was, said that you've got the union membership that is at complete odds with the heads of the unions because for the UAW because Biden came in and destroyed all of those great union jobs by canceling out the Keystone Pipeline. And that angered union members. And basically Biden said, I just go learn to code. And so you've got the rank and file of the union members that are pro-Donald Trump. And then you've got, of course, the heads of the union that are pro Joe Biden. It's a fascinating story. But let me ask you, when it comes to Donald Trump, let's just say that he ends up in office. What does he do day one?
Well, he'll do exactly what he did in day one of 2017, and it will take a solid year and change for us to feel the effects. The curious thing about the energy industry is that it does take a very long time to turn on, but you can turn it off in a second, right? So if you get new leasing access, because they lift all the bans that the Department of Interior has on leasing, and leasing becomes available, it still takes years to move the personnel, the equipment. I mean, if you've ever been on an oil and gas site, you know, the amount of infrastructure there, it doesn't come online really quickly. So it's going to take some time, right? But it will happen. It definitely will happen. You know, if we go back in time and we look at 2017, when he was inaugurated, by the middle or end of 2018, we were seeing gas at averaging of $2 a gallon. Right, we were seeing oil and gas exports exploding, that we became energy independent for the first time in our history. It took a good year and a half. And you know what we didn't see, which is another question for Kamala Harris if she ever actually talked to the press? We didn't see accusations of corporate greed and price gouging. We didn't see presidents or members of Congress saying, we're going to hold a hearing and wonder why these damn fossil fuel companies are so greedy. No one ever accused them of being greedy when gas was averaging $53 a barrel. Why is that? Because the beauty of freedom is that when you have lots of freedom, the industry produces more for the greatest number of people at the lowest price point in the most efficient way, whether it's economic freedom, whether it's free markets, or in this case, a free energy industry. If we're allowed to do our job, it is a boon for the entire country. Our emissions even went down under President Trump. And so we can return to that, but we need to have someone who supports this industry and who genuinely believes in freedom.
Last question, and I got to make it quick because I'm running late, but I think it's worth part of this conversation, which is you have the Biden administration and Democrats for years now pushing electric vehicles and electric vehicle manufacturing. You got the assembling and all that other kind of stuff. But the American people have made a point. I mean, with their wallet, they're not necessarily interested in buying these cars. How does that tie into the situation with the price of gas?
Yeah, well, that also ties into the situation of freedom. And Joe Biden knows what you should be driving. And he is going to make you drive it whether you like it or not. And the way he will do it, the incentives didn't work, right? We gave $7,500 tax credit for people. And it did work initially, and sales went through the roof. But everybody who wanted an EV bought an EV. And now sales are crumbling and the industry is struggling. So what's the alternative? The bans, right? Joe Biden, when he says by the year 2030, half of all cars have to be EVs, it means he's going to ban the alternative. Just yesterday, they announced the new bans on gas stoves. They go into effect in 2008, right? It's not going to kick in right away, but it's the same type of ban. There will be no new gas stoves after 2008. Why? Because you're not doing what we want, damn it. And so you will buy what we want. You will go to work the way we want. It's an awful lot of tyranny. It's the type of command and control economy that you would see in East Germany, not in a free nation. And that's, again, my message on freedom and the threat of Kamala Harris when she says, I will suspend the filibuster to pass the Green New Deal. I will ban certain behaviors to combat climate change. I mean, you have to think back. Our founders fought a revolution over a couple of cent tax on tea, right? Bans of certain behaviors by a little government tyrant is not exactly American. And that's why I think the defeat of her at the election box is critical for the survival of our country as it was founded.
It is interesting, too, as we close, Daniel, that Biden administration said for a long time, no. In fact, I can hear the eye roll of the fact checkers when they said, no, Joe Biden isn't going after your gas stoves, conservatives, the eye roll. And now here we are. Biden administration cements gas stove rule after insisting it is not going after gas stoves. So the thing is, Kamala Harris, she can say whatever she wants, and Joe Biden can try to say something that makes sense. But the bottom line is they're always going to lie because they feel like it's okay to lie so that they can go to what they believe is their greater good, which in my opinion is the destruction of America and freedom. Daniel Turner, how can people find you on X?
Daniel Turner PTF. It stands for Power of the Future. Daniel Turner PTF or powerthefuture.com. And it's great to be on with you, Dan. Thank you so much.
All right, Daniel, have a great a lot of headlines out there that Kamala Harris and the Harris campaign has been manipulating headlines. That story for you and a whole lot more straight ahead on 105.9 FM WMAL.